this is your second time tuning in to our Teaching Tuesday. This is our first Teaching Tuesday. We're going to continue on in the book of John. If this is your first time watching, you can go back maybe about a week and a half ago, and it'll be called The Word About the Word. You can watch that, or you can just pick up with us today. It doesn't matter. Just to kind of give you a brief summary of what's going on, I'm just going to be doing a little bit of a lesson in the Bible, and it's trying to be geared towards anyone, whether you are someone who doesn't believe in the Bible or know anything about that, but are a little bit interested. And if you have grown up in church, believing in God your whole life, hopefully you can get something also out of this. So at the end of this, I will also do another Bible challenge from last week. Nobody got it correctly, so I'm going to just reiterate that, and hopefully someone can figure it out this coming week. These are going to be put up every Tuesday, so make sure you subscribe and like, get the little notification, give us a like, and you can keep up with that. So today we're going to focus on John chapter 1, 6 through 14. And it's really, really neat. Again, you can jump right on in here, but it would be helpful if you got a little understanding of what 1 through 5 was about. Imagine 6 through 14 kind of like taking a big puzzle and dumping it all out. And 1 through 5 is just this big pile of puzzle. I mean, there's just so much packed in there. And now what John does, the author of the book of John, what he does is he starts separating these pieces. They're all still one. And he starts to say, all right, well, those are sky pieces, those are edge pieces, those are the grass pieces, the piece that nobody really likes to deal with because they're so complicated. And so he starts to spread all this stuff out. And so it's really, really neat to unpack what's going on here. So without any further ado, we will start to go ahead and unpack that. All right, so there are 4 main topics, or 4 main titles, 4 main aspects of God or Jesus specifically that John deals with in these passages. And they can all be found in 1 through 5, and then they can also be found in 6 through 14, and probably really all throughout this gospel, but specifically isolated to this part right here. So they are the Word. Jesus is the Word. He is Creator. He is life, and He is light. Now, Creator and life can kind of be sort of the same, but they're also sort of not the same. So again, those are Word, Creator, life, and light. And we'll see those 1 through 5, and then we'll also see those unpacked in 6 through 14. So here we go. Verse 6 through 14. I'll just read the whole thing, and then we'll go back and follow along. Again, I'm reading it NIV 84. There came a man who was sent from God. His name was John. He came as a witness to testify concerning the light, so that through him all men might believe. He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. The true light that gives light to every man was coming into the world. All right, I said I was going to read the whole thing, but I think I'm going to pause right there. I'm going to stop right there because there's just already so much going on. So if you notice in verse 5, John calls Jesus the light. And then in verse 6 through 9, he expands on that aspect. And he says, look, the light has come into the world. And what he does very clearly is say, it's not John. Now that gets a little confusing because John's writing, and then he's talking about John. 2 different Johns. One's the disciple John who's writing this, and the other one is John the Baptist, and we'll hear about him in just probably another week or two. John the Baptist, and he's saying it's not John the Baptist. See, John the Baptist's job was to prepare the way for the light, and he explains that in a little bit. So John's saying, the author, the disciple John, saying, no, it's not John the Baptist who is the light. It's the Word is the light, and we'll find out about who the Word is. It's Jesus, but we'll explain that in a little bit. All right. And so he came into this world to give witness, to bring light into the world. Now, John was just a forebearer. He came and made way for the light. All right. But at the very end, it says about how he came into this world. Then verse 10 talks about that. Well, I'll just go ahead and read it. That'll probably be helpful. Verse 10, he was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. And there we get the creator, the aspect that Jesus is the creator. So we have light and creator already. And he's talking about everything was made through him, and when he comes into his own creation, no one recognizes him. Now he came into the world, which was his own, meaning he created all things created through him, but his own did not receive him. Now, that just means he was rejected. Specifically by the Jews just, and hopefully we'll have time to unpack that a little bit more, but the Jews, Jesus was a blasphemous person to them, and he claimed to be God, which he was, but many Jews thought that was unheard of. You couldn't do that. You couldn't claim to be God, because God was such a holy being, and so for you to associate yourself to that was just unheard of. So they rejected his claims, and so they rejected him, although they were made through him, and that's important. Verse 12 tells us, "Yet all who received him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God." Verse 13 says, "Children not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God." And so what that is saying is that anyone who comes to God, whoever comes to Jesus and says, "I believe in your name, I believe why you came, I believe who you are, that you are creator, that you are the light, that you are these things," you now become what we call born again, that you now become a child of God, and not based on anything earthly. And that's what they're talking about, husband or natural. It's nothing of what we would think of mortal or flesh. It's all on a spiritual level. And so what you actually get to do, no matter what home life or what your childhood was like, you get to be born again into this family of God. And so now God is your Father, and there is no greater Father than God. But what it takes is that first step is to come before God and say, "I believe in Jesus. I believe in who he is, I believe in what he came for, and I believe what happened to him, both the death and the resurrection." That's apart, and we'll get to that. But what's important right now is to understand is that you have the ability to be a child of God, which is a huge thing. I mean, if there's any family that I would want to belong to, okay, not the one that has the most amount of money or the most amount of status, but if there's one family I could choose to be part of, it would certainly be God's family. And so I encourage you, if you're not part of that, to really consider that, okay? And if you have questions more about that, please write them in the comments below. I would love to discuss that more with you. Okay, so in there we have, it kind of shifts again. Remember I said the creator and the life were kind of two different things. So we have, but they're kind of the same. So we have light in verses 6 through 9, 10, and into 13, 10 to 13, you have this creatorship, how he created everything, but he's also the giver of life. And not necessarily the physical life, yes, physical life, but more importantly than that, right now, is the spiritual aspect. Jesus is the creator and the author of spiritual life, because only through that are you able to be born again. See how that kind of works in? Pretty neat. And then now 14 to verse 14. The Word became flesh. There's that word, which we see back in, verse 1, okay? The beginning was the Word, right? So the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen the glory of the one and only, or the one begotten, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. Okay, so last week I kind of delved into this a little bit more about within God, you have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And we call that the triune God. And so what John is probably understanding is like, okay, I get this is probably confusing. You have God and Son, but Jesus is God, so how do I, okay. All right, so he kind of unpacks what he means by the Word. All right, and the Word is Jesus, and that's where we get this idea that Jesus came. God the Father sent Jesus the Son, who is also God. Confusing, I know. Into this world, so that you and I and everyone else might receive eternal life. And so that's what's going on there. He's taking 1 through 5, verses 1 through 5. Word, light, life, and creator. And he's unpacking all of those and letting you know just a little bit more of a glimpse of what is going on. All right. Now, I encourage you to read this through, read those verses, try to make sense of it of your own. Here's where I really want to go with it. So many times, we base our value on what man says, whether it's our family, our friends, strangers, internet. There's so many things telling us who we are, making judgments about ourselves. And what I encourage you to do is, if you are in the child of God, if you are a child of God and you are in the family of God, no other position ranks higher than that. All right. So I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm a husband, I'm many things, but none compared to the fact truly that I am a child of God. I have a Father who is in heaven, who will never forsake me, who will never leave me, who is always watching out for me, who will always be there and providing for me. And yes, there will be times where I go through hardships, and there will be times where I go through struggles, and there will definitely be times where I feel like I'm all alone. But truly and honestly, because I'm a child of God, He will never forsake me, and He will treat me like a good Father that He is. And so I encourage you, no matter what your home life was, whether it was the best home life you ever had or one that you wish you could redo all over again, I encourage you, take that step forward to being a child of God by believing in what Jesus did. And then the next thing is, we wonder all the time, what's God like? I can't see Him, I can't experience Him, I don't know what it's like. Well, right here in John 1, we find out what God's like, because Jesus was God. Jesus is God, and He came into this world some 2,000 years ago. And who He was is who God is. I mean, it says right here, the Word became flesh and made His dwelling among us. We have seen His glory, the glory of the one and only, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. And so when Jesus came into this world, we got to see a glimpse of the glory of not only Himself, but also the Father. And we'll explain that Jesus goes into that later on. So I encourage you, if you want to know who God is, maybe you are a long-time believer, maybe you've never really been interested in God, but you're kind of starting to a little bit, and you want to know more, read about Jesus. Jesus is God in this world, and Emmanuel, God with us. So the Bible challenge, if you guys are following along with that, it's the first alphabetical book of the Bible. The chapter is what every even number has as their factor. And then the verse is a two-digit number that when you add those two digits, or you multiply those two digits, you get the same answer. Okay? The product and the sum of those two digits are the same. Okay? So there you go. That's your challenge. Hopefully one of you will get it. Make sure you write it in the comments below if you have any questions, or if you're just not sure about something I said tonight, make sure you write that in the comments, and I will also get back to you. That's it for tonight, and hope you guys enjoyed it. Give me a thumbs up if you did. Subscribe if you want to continue next week. Just right off the hip, looks like we'll be in verses 15 through, well, we'll start through 15. We'll see how far we make it. All right. Thanks, guys. See ya.